The hosts of Bracketology are experts in nothing. They claim no advanced knowledge or profound insights. Instead, they are just three judgmental idiots who really like to bloviate their own opinions whenever given the chance. Take what they have to say with a grain of salt, or not at all. You'll probably be better off that way.
Guys, did you hear about the Nintendo Switch? Did you have a chance to watch the release video?
No, what's the Nintendo Switch?
It is a portable gaming console by the Nintendo Corporation. The same people that brought to you legends like Mario and Zelda. And I figured
Tetris.
And Tetris. And you can't forget Tetris, Matt's favorite. And I figured since we're talking about video games, we might as well talk about the Switch since that just launched.
We're not ones to typically talk about hot topics and headlines in the news, but we'll make an exception for this one.
Because we're all nerds.
Yeah, I did see the trailer.
Thoughts?
I have some.
Well, FYI, the first console variant of Tetris was developed and published by Bulletproof Software for the Famicom, not for Nintendo.
The Famicom is Nintendo.
Nope.
Yes.
Different name.
The Famicom is what they... Oh, okay. Aneurysm aside.
What is that?
Aneurysm.
Okay.
Aneurysm.
I heard like I don't know.
It's like Anne Rice. Aneurysm.
Anyway.
Oh, aneurysm. Thoughts on the Switch, gentlemen? The Switch 2.
Well,
It's
I think...
the second one.
Cool. I think that it is lackluster.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed in it. I was expecting a new Nintendo system in the year of our Lord, 2025.
Nope, it's just a Gregorian calendar.
No, our Lord Yoshi Christ. I would have expected there to be an improvement more than just a little bit of a bigger screen.
Yeah,
and a slightly better processor. Yeah, but the controllers look weird because the controllers are no longer just slid into place. Now you have to like push them into recessed things to like get them in, and it just feels like it's more likely to break.
Magnetic.
Or they still go in though.
Yeah, but I'm saying you're not gonna have like push them into a clip thing or anything. They just
I think they just pop on.
Well, I mean, the trailer didn't exactly give us a whole lot of actual information.
No, that's fair. I saw rumor and speculation that the controllers will also somehow double as a mouse. So you'll be able to move like a cursor around on the screen. And people are very excited about that. And they're all like, oh, that's going to be game changing. And I'm like, what are you going to use that for? Like, what purpose is that going to serve?
Wii Sports, bruh. You're going to be bringing that shit back.
You don't need a mouse for Wii Sports.
You don't need a mouse for cursor for that.
What are you gonna?
It's the same, motion sensing technology.
Yeah, but that exists in the
now.
Nintendo Switch today.
Well, all right.
There's a Wii Sports for the Nintendo Switch.
I think it's literally called Sports. I think that's what it's called.
I think you guys are crapping on it. I think there's some legitimate improvements, right? It's going to have the power of a PlayStation 4 Pro.
Great. Last generation.
Yeah.
Again,
but
Nintendo
what do you
was
expect?
Nintendo. I can. You know what? You're right. I should at this point continuously expect for Nintendo's hardware to be a generation behind everyone else's.
They don't need cutting edge processing and FPS and things like that for the games that they create. They are a family-centric content creation. And Mario...
for a console that can't even run Fortnite.
I mean, it can run it. It's just real bad.
Yeah, but I mean, again, that's because it's operating currently 2 generations behind. And its next innovation is just going to move them to 1 generation behind.
Just a couple years prior to the next generation coming out.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I love Nintendo. I've been a Nintendo guy for a very long period of time. I played a lot of shit on my Nintendo Switch. I like it. I enjoy it. I also recognize it is a pile of 20-year-old tech.
Yeah. And they're not improving it at all this go around. I mean, the controllers too, they look like they have numerous fail points. The who knows what to expect with the Joy-Cons and the joysticks on the Joy-Cons, whether or not they're going to function. But I see the path that they wanted to take with adding the kickstand and making it that narrow, but I don't know, man. That just looks like a fail point to me too. It looks like that thing's going to snap real easy.
Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, that's what my question was going to be.
Like, I'm going to have to. Like, it's the Nintendo.
And their showcase game is Mario Kart 9. I mean,
fuck you. That's amazing. Mario Kart is still the GOAT of racing games.
It's a great game. I love Mario Kart. I go back with Mario Kart. Mario Kart and I went to Homecoming together. But
what's going to be different between 9 versus 8? And if you're launching a new system, why not go with Mario Odyssey 2?
Straight up. Give me another 3D Mario game. Give me a 3D open world Luigi game like Odyssey. I'd be fucking down. Or give me fucking Yoshi Odyssey. That I just got really excited about a game that's never going to be made.
What about Smash Bros? You know Smash Bros will come out sooner.
Yeah, it's fine. But again, like, what is going to be new? What's going to be different? And I think that's... Or give me another Zelda game. Give me an upgraded fucking Ocarina of Time on the Switch too.
It's backwards compatible, so you'll be able to play Breath of the Wild on...
You'll be able to use your $400 new system that's a generation behind to be able to play the game that you really liked on last year's or the last generation model, which was 2 generations behind.
Well, it's clear that there is just no pleasing you two jerks.
Look, again, I'll buy it. I'm pleased that I'm going to have the opportunity to play more Nintendo games. I just wish that it would have been more exciting. It's like every... Never mind.
It's like every...
Yeah, you can't end on a...
It's like every morning when I wake up, I just want it to be a little bit more exciting, and I'm always disappointed, but I'm going to keep getting up.
I mean...
Could that have been more depressing?
It was a little sad, but...
I was hoping for at least a chuckle, but... I don't know. We'll see. It's going to sell. That's the thing. It's going to make people happy, and good for Nintendo. It keeps them going.
Yeah.
On that note, on with the show.
Hello, and welcome back to Bracketology, the podcast that definitively decides all things tournament bracket style. You can blow my ocarina. I am Scott Grubb.
I'm exploring the dark recesses of your space on Twitch. I'm Matt.
Matt what? No, wait.
Oh, I'm Matt Robinson.
I am the evilest resident, Dan Default.
This week we head into round 2 of our best video game franchise bracket. We have narrowed the field down to 16. Guys, I think we've trimmed the fat a little bit. You know, I think we had a good list of 32 to begin with. Now, if you ask our friends on the internet, everywhere, all the social medias where we've posted this bracket, there's some opinions out there about some of the franchises we may have left off. But I feel like those aside, we've still trimmed the fat pretty well. We're down to 16.
Yeah, I think that the most common question that we've received is irrelevant. So we're in a pretty good space. No, so I think I'm going to take this opportunity to plug. Look, the most common question that we've received about this is where the fuck is Mario? And the answer has been already given at some point in previous episodes. So go back and listen to it. But Mario's on his way.
I do think, like, semantically speaking, we have to address the fact that someone out there is correct. Technically speaking, we are determining the second best video game franchise because no one's going to hold a candle to Mario. But yes, Mario's coming down the pike. We have a whole plan in place, and I'm super. You got that? I'm super excited. Super excited for it. We're going to do a live recording when it comes time for us to talk about Mario. And I mean, are we going full details? Are we ready to reveal?
Well, I mean, as many details as we have. So right now we still are figuring out a few of the minor things, like where's it going to stream? How do you access it? Things like that. But we have a big holiday coming up here soonish. Mario Day is March 10th every single year. So March 10th,
Monday this year.
7 p.m. Is that what we said?
7 p.m. Mountain Time.
7 p.m. Mountain Time. We will be doing a live episode. It's probably going to be a longer episode too. We're going to do 16 Mario games to determine the best Mario game of all Mario.
One way or another, we're going to be live on a Twitch. So we'll once we get all the details, we'll be posting it. But be on the lookout for that. Monday, March 10th, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Live bracketology episode determining the best Mario game
of all Mario space and time.
That is right. But before that, we've got 16 competitors in front of us. We've got some competitions to talk about. Where should we get started? Let's keep going, figuring out that second best video game franchise.
Dangle?
Let's start with the top of the East Division.
Oh, we're breaking all kinds of format. We're going East. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be Assassin's Creed.
That is 100% what I heard in my head too. I was prepared to say the same thing if you didn't.
Assassin's Creed versus Donkey Kong. The DK versus the AC.
Conky Dong. Let's go. So Donkey Kong, I don't know.
You don't know Donkey Kong?
No, I don't know if they have had any. Like, what is the newest entry to the Donkey Kong franchise outside of Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros? Like, what is the most recent entry into the Donkey Kong games?
That's a great. Actually, that's not that far away. It's Tropical Freeze on the Nintendo Switch. It was just a few years ago.
Okay.
It was a tremendous game, actually. So the Tropical Freeze is it was a Nintendo Switch version of essentially like an updated Donkey Kong Country. So more modern gameplay mechanics, more modern, graphics, things like that, but still a true kind of side scroller.
Are you saying you said not that long ago? That game came out over 10 years. It's almost 11 years ago.
Oh, shit.
It came out in 2014. It originally for the Wii, it was re-released for the Switch in 2018, but the game is 10 years old.
So that's why I was thinking that it was not that long ago. I mean, 2018 is still a while back, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's a second grader.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely been a hot minute since.
And I think that goes to kind of the question that I wanted to bring up, is that Assassin's Creed is relatively a new franchise. And for those that are unfamiliar, Assassin's Creed is just that. You are an assassin. You go through the games, through different time periods, and you're basically going around sneakily killing people. It was innovative in that space, but I don't think the innovation compares to Donkey Kong. When you think about what Donkey Kong gave us in terms of Jumpman, which later became Mario, in terms of the Super Nintendo Donkey Kong Country and what that was able to do for gaming at that time. I mean, this was like 3D looking graphics before, the
before a 3D
PlayStation
system.
Yeah, before those systems were available. And I don't think that Assassin's Creed kind of lives up in that. But when you think about longevity,
is Donkey Kong losing its grip a little bit? Is it losing its foothold in that legacy?
exactly, well, I think, and that's kind of the question.
I think I have an argument. So I am a big Assassin's Creed fan. I got into the first game. I liked some of the other ones. Brotherhood wasn't that great, but into Odyssey and then fucking Valhalla are tremendous games. However, it's fallen off a bit for me. Like, so I'm looking at Assassin's Creed games. Mirage was the most recent one. Assassin's Creed Shadows was supposed to come out last year and then got backlash because people are stupid. No offense if you are upset about the characters that are in Assassin's Creed Shadows, but you're dumb. Now that's supposed to come out.
Wow.
Well, I'm just saying.
Wait, so what was the backlash though? What caused the delay?
I believe that the main character is black.
So were people upset about like an African American samurai?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that, and there was a female as well that people were upset about. It was, yeah.
God forbid the protagonist be anything other than a cis white dude.
Yeah, fuck cis white dudes. However, it has fallen off for me. Like I loved what was a Black Flag, I think was one of them too. Like when you started doing some of the nautical battles and things like that, and you get away a little bit. So I think innovation wise, it re-innovated itself. But man, I know it's not one of our 4 categories. Donkey Kong has, especially Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2, some of the best soundtracks in all of gaming ever. And I didn't get to say this last time.
I mean, that might feed into the replayability, right? You turn that game back on just to be able to jam to the great music and the random monkey sounds.
The water levels have truly, it is inspirational in terms of the music that's in some of those levels. I don't know. I mean, this is a hard matchup simply just because I like both of these franchises.
I mean, I think we're talking about like a real legacy within Donkey Kong. Not necessarily the strongest. Definitely, I mean, within this bracket, not the strongest of long-term legacies, but it's one to be respected. Versus something in Assassin's Creed that's a bit newer, a bit more innovative, and still a bit more, maybe, I don't know, maybe a bit more relevant at this point. I mean, the most relevant thing you've seen from Donkey Kong in the last few years is his appearance in the Super Mario Brothers movie. He's always kind of been like in Mario's shadow a little bit, you know. His again, he was huge with the Donkey Kong Jr. and like the N64 games and all that, and Donkey Kong Country, but here in the last couple years, like the only reason like my kids know of Donkey Kong is the movie and Mario Kart. Like there's probably a fair generation out there who has no idea he's like a standalone video game character of his own, right? You know?
I mean, I hear you, and I think that's fair, but I do think that he had the opportunity to kind of be Dan, is your house on fire right now? What is happening?
Why does your video keep turning red?
I look, I don't know. The camera is doing that. It's because I'm taking shades of Donkey Kong.
Did we jinx it by me having a dream about your shitty tech capabilities, and now here we are experiencing them in real time?
I guess for those of you that aren't watching on YouTube, my video is going from a normal lighting to like a red lighting, and I don't know why.
You keep getting like this red hue. All right, maybe that's it's like Showtime at the Apollo. That's the light telling us it's time to move on.
I think I'm ready for a vote. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready for a vote.
Go for it.
Start us off.
So this might be my age coming through, but realistically, I think the original innovation of Donkey Kong and the replayability of Donkey Kong, like I could put Donkey Kong Country on right now, as many years with 30 years since its release, and I could still enjoy the hell out of that game. Where I don't know if I could say the same for the first Assassin's Creed, which came out much later. So my vote is going for Donkey Kong.
Okay. Matt, how do you feel?
I mean, I'm up in the air, man. Again, I love both of these franchises tremendously. I think I talked about it. Like the two games that I would get every year when my ex and I were together were Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty. Like those were whatever the new Assassin's Creed was. I always got it. And the thing about Donkey Kong, to Dan's point, I can go back and replay that over and over and over again and feel the same kind of way about it as the first few times I played. I mean, do you have a decision?
Yeah, I think so. You can tell I have a strong conviction in it. I think, I don't know. Again, maybe there's a bit of like bias. I'm trying to take myself out of it a little bit because Assassin's Creed never really pulled me in as a whole. I recognize that it's incredibly popular. And like conceptually, I really like it. I wish that I enjoyed the games more. I just don't know that I'm necessarily a stealth game kind of person. People have described me as being loud in the past. So being quiet in a video game is like contrary to my nature, I think. And I think, Dan kind of made some good points. Oh God. That, I still have an N64 in the basement. I still have Donkey Kong. And I went and bought a booster pack because I realized I had Donkey Kong. No idea where my booster pack was. I couldn't play it. I got a booster pack just so I could play some more Donkey Kong. The replayability of those games is certainly there. The innovation that it had at the time, putting those like kind of painted backgrounds with the 3D characters in front of it and creating that pseudo 3D look was, I think, inspirational for video game designers at the time. It pushed the envelope of what they thought was capable, and it spurred further creativity and development. I'm trying to think if there's anything that really puts Assassin's Creed over. I think Donkey Kong's a bit on a downslide, but if we're thinking of like the longevity, the replayability, and just kind of that legacy, I feel like Donkey Kong still has a bit of an edge. So that would probably be my vote. I think that's my vote.
That's fair. I am surprised. I think that you would enjoy some of the more recent Assassin's Creed games. Just like with your Prince of Persia enjoyment and things like that. Odyssey definitely has a similar, because you don't have to do stealth. Like I think that's the thing about Assassin's Creed is it moved a little bit away from the need for stealth. I'll give my vote to Assassin's Creed, just not as a pity vote, but just because it deserves at least one. But I think that either of these moving on is totally understandable. So Donkey Kong moves on.
If I had more time and enough of attention span for a single player story driven game, then maybe Assassin's Creed would be up my alley, but we're not quite there yet. All right. Up next, we have the juggernaut that is Tetris versus Need for Speed.
Matt, why don't you break down Tetris for us?
Tetris is a single game that's been remade 4,000 times, and it doesn't deserve to be on this list at all.
And Need for Speed?
Like literally, you Google... Hold on. Need for Speed games. You Google Need for Speed games, and it has a list of all of the games, right? You Google the Tetris games, and it literally just says Tetris.com. So Need for Speed gets my vote.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't have an argument for why Tetris would even be in consideration. I still don't think it belongs on this bracket at all. I don't think it's a franchise. I think it's a single game.
Maybe you should spend some time on Tetris.com playing the game for free and see if it, like, I don't know, reinvigorates a love for it.
I enjoy Tetris. I enjoy the game. I think it's a good puzzle game, but it's a single game.
Okay.
That I mean, kind of revolutionized or created an entire genre of games.
Yeah, and I'm not taking away what the single game Tetris did for video games. This bracket is video game franchises, Dan.
We can talk about the music in Donkey Kong. We can damn sure talk about the music in Tetris.
Yeah. Again, I'm not taking away what the single game Tetris did. If all McDonald's were owned by a single person, would you call any of those franchises?
It would be a large...
I don't know how this argument fits, but it does fit.
I mean, that made more sense than I expected it to. But still, like, I don't know. When you really boil down some of the games that we're talking about here, like, how much innovation is there really in a Call of Duty series or the Madden series? Like, Madden's, it's football. It's the same game over and over again. It's still football every time they make it. It's just football. You know what I mean?
Same plays, you know.
Well,
you're not getting a whole lot of difference there.
But that's not the matchup that we're talking about. We're talking about Need for Speed.
I mean, yeah, but I'm just saying, if you're saying it's the same game just made over and over again, it depends on the scale with which you look at that before you can really say that. Because there have been, once you take a game and you add a multiplayer element, you've innovated it. Now it's a little bit different. It's a different game. You add competition to it. Now it's a little bit different. It's a different game.
Sure. Again, my vote is for Need for Speed.
All right, Dan.
So Need for Speed has had a bunch of entries. And to me, I think there's a lot of similarities between Need for Speed and the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Tetris, and I was about to shit on you so hard.
No, so there have been way too many Fast and Furious movies, only a couple of which are good, and a lot of stinky entries into that series. And I kind of feel the same way for Need for Speed. Whereas Tetris is always good because the foundation of Tetris is so good. And that's the thing, like, you're knocking it because they took something relatively simple, a premise relatively simple, and made a really strong game. But they did that, and I think that needs to be recognized. So yeah, Tetris might not have as many entries, especially now, but it changed the landscape of gaming, and it is definitely one of the highest selling games of all time. And in like so many spin-offs of Tetris exist out there.
You
that would
list
not
off
be here.
3 spin-offs of Tetris without Googling right now.
Dr. Mario.
That's not Tetris.
The shit it isn't.
That's a Mario game.
It is a Mario game based on the puzzle schematics
yes,
of Tetris.
Hold on. I'm going to use your words against you. Based on Tetris, not it's Tetris that happened to include Mario.
Like Dr. Mario exists without Tetris. That's what I'm saying. It has caused so many games to come out to try to copy it. We talked about the same thing with Doom. There were so many Doom ripoffs when Doom came out. It wasn't, these games weren't Doom, but they took the success that Doom brought and tried to capitalize on it. Same thing happened to games that wanted to be like Tetris.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Doom lost in the first round despite that. So if you're going to put that up as like
but
reason why Tetris should move
Sonic.
on.
Yeah, it went against Sonic.
And this is,
if you put Doom against a couple other competitors in this list, Doom advances.
A couple other. Look.
Well, I don't want to like give
you've
away
listed
my bracket or poop.
One game that's not a Tetris game.
Look, there are countless nameless games that are built on the Tetris premise, right? Puzzle games.
I'm not asking for that. I'm asking you to list off Tetris games.
I think there's an argument to be made that without a game like Tetris, you don't see games later, or they're different at the very least. But the game Tetris informed and inspired games like Candy Crush.
Don't Google. I see you.
Like Candy Crush and some of the other puzzle games you see like that.
I'm not arguing that. I certainly am not. I think that Tetris has a legitimate place and a milestone in gaming history.
Really? Because you're acting like it doesn't.
No, I'm not. I'm arguing that it's not a franchise. It's a single game. That is my argument. And look, Need for Speed clearly has numerous games. And yes, is it similar to Fast and the Furious? Yes, one of the most popular film franchises in the last 30 years. Absolutely. Just look at the money that it's made.
I know.
It's based on a very simple facet. Drive cars.
Fast
the thing
cars.
About Need for Speed, though, is that it's accessible. It's available to a ton of different people, right? It's got arcade versions. It's got console versions. It's been updated and upgraded. And while it is very much new games, it has a simple beginning, which is driving cars.
Tetris has a simple beginning of solving a puzzle, and it has been the single most accessible video game since its inception. You could play it on your phone. You could play it on consoles. You could play it on arcades. You could play it on your calculator in 8th grade algebra. It's like literally the most... It's one of the first games kids like would be introduced to. It is... There's no debate that it's like the most accessible thing on here.
You're right. I'm not arguing that. I'm giving points to Need for Speed and saying Tetris isn't a franchise.
So you're saying that from a longevity perspective, Tetris clearly wins. From an accessibility standpoint, Tetris clearly wins. From a replayability factor, Tetris wins. But Need for Speed gets your vote.
Yes, because Tetris is not a video game franchise. Tetris is a video game
franchise. Tetris. There have been different iterations of Tetris, like Tetris 1 or Tetris, Tetris 2, Tetris 99. There have been almost every console, Nintendo console or regular console that has come out. Mobile phones have their version of Tetris. Tetris.com. Like
it's all just Tetris. It's all just the same game.
Dude, all right. You could say that about Madden, you could say that about NBA 2K, you could say that about so many games that slightly upgrade the graphics every year and update the player names, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready to vote.
All right, let's do this.
Go for it.
Dan, Matt already kicked off the vote.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes
Y'all
ago.
just kept arguing.
I'm going Tetris because, unlike Matt, I believe it is a franchise, and it clearly beats in all 4 categories that we are using to measure these competitors. It clearly beats Need for Speed in longevity. Yes, it's been around much longer, and it's still in our cultural zeitgeist. It's still something that we reference. It's still something that we play. In accessibility, yes, one of the most accessible games on the market, is out there on every format. Replayability, 100%. who doesn't want to sit down and find that moment of zen, getting those blocks to fit and then getting the Tetris? It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's Tetris. I mean, it at least for now, it's still Tetris.
That's fine, but I'm not moving on my stance.
It's fine as long as you move Tetris along on our graphics.
All right, Call of Duty versus Mortal Kombat.
Wow. You want to talk about games that have repeated the same formula over and over and over and over again without any innovation to their own? We got two right here.
Which Mortal Kombat was it that had the guy?
All of them. They all have the same shit. No, that was like the first one, wasn't it?
No, it was definitely not the first one. I think it was the Mortal Kombat 3.
I believe you're right, but I'm also not an expert, so I'm not gonna stand on that. But I do think it was Mortal Kombat 3.
I mean, realistically, these two games innovated their genres, right? First-person shooters with Call of Duty, fighting games with Mortal Kombat. You would be hard-pressed to find either two better represented genres than these two competitors.
I think they define their genres for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so Call of Duty kind of took what Counter-Strike started and went ham with it, right? With online multiplayer, with being able to do consistent, constant battles between players. But it also had, a story with all of their different games. Mortal Kombat, similarly, really was the fighting genre, and still is the fighting genre's flagship franchise. I think for both of these, so longevity, if you just look at how long Mortal Kombat's been out, and they've constantly been putting out new games, I think Mortal Kombat's got that by an edge. Accessibility, I think they're both very accessible to a lot of people that want to play them. Now, what I will say from an accessibility standpoint, not just what game or what platform can you play it on, but also just getting into it. I think Call of Duty may have a little bit of a downside there, just because if you're getting into the online multiplayer, you can get very down on the game very, very quickly because of how ridiculous some people are.
Yeah.
The bot situation in that game leaves a bit to be desired.
From an innovation perspective, I think they're both about the same level on innovation, right? I mean, you kind of talked about it. Like, the most innovative thing that Call of Duty did was add zombie modes to their games, which is a lot of fun. Like, I like the zombie modes more than I like playing online in Call of Duty.
Well, I think Call of Duty brought that online play to the forefront, right? This was
initially, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the first games where you could do that and get, embarrassed by a 12-year-old and hear them say terrible things about your mom.
But I do think from an arguments perspective, from innovation with Mortal Kombat, one of the things that Mortal Kombat had going for it is it really... Now, I don't know the whole history. We're experts in absolutely zero. But Mortal Kombat's one of the first big competitive games that created tournaments, that created what essentially has become esports. Like, I think a lot of that can be attributed to Mortal Kombat type games.
There were huge Tetris tournaments way before.
Bitch, Mortal we're not Kombat. Talking about Tetris. I'm going to shit on your doorstep.
And if you really want to talk about esports, though, Call of Duty dominates.
It dominates it
now. Yeah,
for sure. But I'm just saying, I think Mortal Kombat had the kickoff for that in a lot of ways. And then replayability, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I look at them as being, if you're into one of them, you're going to replay it over and over again.
Yeah. Both of them have that benefit of, like, a game or a match in these are typically short. They're easy to finish one, pick up the next. Mortal Kombat, you pick your character, you move on. Call of Duty, it's, defeat, victory, whatever, you hit play again, and then within minutes you're in another match. There's a lot there. I think Call of Duty has a bit of an edge and innovation for me. Also in the fact that, like, you know, every year they have, when they do have the new game, they have the new maps and they have like the different play modes that go along with them. And I think they've done a good job of like staying aware of what the audience likes and bringing back those maps that everyone holds on to. Everyone loves Nuketown. What's the one with the 4 pillars of containers and it's like a super small map. Anyway, Shipment.
Silos.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
Oh.
You know, they bring those maps back. They make special playlists specifically targeting those maps that, like, you know, they know how to kind of tap into the dopamine that everyone gets from the game and come out with game modes that really feed into that. I don't know that Mortal Kombat has that kind of flexibility to do that because their gameplay is very static. You pick a character and then you fight, you know?
Yeah, but they've added like new combos and finishers. They still have some of the original finishers that the original, characters had. But here's another thing for Mortal Kombat. Without Mortal Kombat and that gaming studio, we would never have gotten the DC universe where Superman turns evil and that entire fantastic storyline. Like having a Superman that turns into a complete dictator.
I mean, it did. If you want to talk about just in terms of influence in that way, the Mortal Kombat studio, which is what NetherRealm, created those DC fighting games essentially, which then led to a whole entire series of comic books being created that were associated with them. I mean, I think that's a good call to a point. But going back to Scott's point, I don't think there's a lot of those like alternate game modes, alternate options, like the most that you got for Mortal Kombat is alternate skins, right? So you can have Reptile with the mask or Reptile in the Reptile form, or you could have Smoke in the mask, or you could have Smoke without, right? I will say one of the things that Mortal Kombat was really good with, though, was a lot of, so initially Easter eggs in a lot of ways, right? With babalities to fight the anti-fatality Nintendo stance. But then also things like finding additional characters and unlocking them and having to win a certain number of matches. And they also created a lot of urban legends with Mortal Kombat where it's like, oh, I think this character's in the game. And then it got people to play for hours and hours and hours and come to find out that character's never in the game to begin with, right? And a lot of that comes from just the lore that was created within Mortal Kombat and their creators. I think the other thing Mortal Kombat has in more recent years, we talked about this in the first round, is collaboration. Yeah. Having RoboCop, having the Terminator and Rambo, and all of these like random series. All of the random collaborations that exist.
Massacre. Yeah.
But I mean, Call of Duty also has that.
They do. They do now, for sure. Especially they've got a big old collaboration with WWE. They've got the fucking Squid Games stuff that's been going on. Have y'all seen any of those?
I don't think I have.
Have y'all watched Squid Games at all?
Yes.
So they're one of the first. I haven't watched the whole thing, but one of the first like challenges in Squid Games is a stoplight game, red light, green light.
Yeah.
And they included like a game mode in Call of Duty that was red light, green light. And as soon as it goes red light, you have to stop moving, even if you have like an opponent in front of you, or else you die. And it's actually pretty interesting to watch just because it adds an extra layer of intensity. I don't know. I think on that note, I think I've talked myself into, I think I'm going to have to vote for Call of Duty to move this forward. Mainly because even though it's not very innovative, they're trying things and they are at least keeping the audience engaged with game modes that are enjoyed and things along those lines. So I think that's the box I'm grabbing.
There we are again. All right, Dan, what do you think?
So I think both of these, again, like we've said before, kind of lead their genre. But when it comes down to it, when I think about the fighting game genre, it's not just Mortal Kombat that I think of when I think of like the innovation and the class leading, because Street Fighter has to be kind of in that same vein. And because of that, I don't think there is in multiplayer first person shooter. I don't think there is an equivalent to that Street Fighter for Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty was one of the, if not the first, definitely the biggest to bring that online functionality where you could play with friends or complete strangers and get yelled at. And I think that innovation in and of itself revolutionized gaming as we know it today. And Call of Duty, I think, gets my vote.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we got a sweep here. Call of Duty, I mean, I think the replayability factor for me, like a fighting game like Mortal Kombat, it gets kind of boring and repetitive after a while. Call of Duty, even though you could argue you're doing the same thing over and over again, I think your outcomes can be a little bit more varied. You have freedom to roam the map, different gun types you can play. You can play a Snoop Dogg or Laura Croft or Ash or whatever you know. There's a lot of variation in that. I think that brings some fun to it. I, I mean, and it's current status in the gaming conversation, I think really lends to understanding what its longevity has been up to this point, and really kind of like you can crystal ball out the fact there's going to be some longevity. That Call of Duty is going to be around for a lot longer. Not that Mortal Kombat isn't, but they're both going to be around for a long time, and Call of Duty is going to dominate the conversation for a while still.
Yeah, so. I do love Mortal Kombat. I just want to call that out. I think that it's a great franchise, and I have a lot of really good memories with it. But at the same time, you're not wrong. It does get stale after a while if you're not a competitive player.
Yeah, no, I'm a button masher. Let's be honest.
So Call of Duty moves on. We get to our last matchup of the East angle.
Woo! I have a feeling that this is going to make me upset with the two of you. But we have Madden versus Resident Evil.
I'm not entirely
would you be upset?
Yeah.
Because to me, I think that there, as much as I love both of these, I think that there is a clear winner in terms of innovation. I'll start by saying Resident Evil definitely defines like that horror genre. I can't remember a game reaching the level that Resident Evil did in that horror realm. And I vividly remember playing my brother's PlayStation on Resident Evil and all the jump scares that even the first game had that were absolutely amazing. And it has gone on to produce so many games and so many movies. Some of those movies are actually good. And I think that it deserves a lot of flowers. Madden, on the other hand, I think brought a level of realism to football games that had never been there before. When Madden got involved, they were taking plays that were actually being ran in the NFL. Madden was actually directly involved with the creation of some of those things. And, you know, especially during that time, nobody really knew X's and O's like John Madden did. And I think that the innovation of that and the success of that led to MLB, NBA, and all NHL, all of these major sports franchises getting video game representation came on the back of Madden. So as much as I love Resident Evil, I think Madden is the bigger franchise.
I don't know. That feels like a bit of a stretch to me because I had an NES. I have pro wrestling for the NES. I have NHL, whatever it was, 92 94. Or whatever. I've maybe something for my NES. I have pro football for my NES before Madden was involved. like sports games existed before Madden became involved, and I think there was already a market for that. That progression was not going to go away, whether Madden got involved or not. We would have had sports games today still. You know, no other franchise is like no other franchise puts a name on theirs. It's just, you know, MLB 21, NHL 24. This could just be NFL 2026 coming out soon, right? It just so happened one person somehow got their name on it and licensed along with it. So I don't know that we can really like put too much stock in the idea that without Madden we wouldn't have sports games.
Well, I mean, the first Madden game came out in like '88. So I think it predates a lot of the games that you're talking about because
but Tecmo Bowl was available well before then, right? Like I think to Scott's point, the sports games existed, they just didn't have that type of what's the right word for it? Sponsorship.
They didn't have like a household name recognition.
Tecmo Bowl came out in '87. The first Madden game came out in 1988. So it's not like Tecmo Bowl was there long before Madden.
Okay, but the first basketball video game was released in April of 1974. So, I mean, it's got a good 14 years on Madden's involvement, you know? It was an Atari game. So, like, sports being in video games existed long before Madden. And I think a lot of things have been done interesting in the sports realm for video games. Like you think NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, like those things, NFL Street, like they took the genre of sports and they innovated it outside of Madden. Madden has been, you're right, it brings a realism, but it brings a consistency that I feel like hurts it a little bit in the innovation standpoint. It's what we were just saying earlier when we were talking about Tetris, that the biggest innovation you see in Madden year over year is ultimately the rosters and, you know, whether the Raiders are playing in California or Nevada, right? Like that's the big differences there, or what happens in the league. The league influences the game more than the game influences the league. Resident Evil, though, I mean, again, kind of like bringing this idea of horror to the forefront of video games. I'm not saying necessarily it was the first, or it's definitely not the only, but it's the flagship for it. And I think horror as a video game genre now, I feel like it's picked up steam in the last couple of years. I feel like Resident Evil has done some reboots and re-releases and HD remakes that have definitely gotten some kudos and some attention. Now, again, those are remakes. There's reboots of older games, so there's not necessarily innovation in them. It's tapping into people's nostalgia and willingness to replay them, but that replayability is there. That being said, Madden's replayability is obviously significant. Otherwise, they wouldn't put one out every single year.
I think I don't know. For me, I think I'm looking at a satisfaction. That's not one of our four like main grades that we're looking at. But just in terms of like audience satisfaction as a whole, when they re-released Resident Evil 4, which is one of the best Resident Evil games of all time, but it's an older game and the controls of it were shit on new consoles. So they remastered it, right? And they put in new controls, they put in modern controls, like they made it a little bit more, talk about accessibility, made it more accessible to new gamers, not just people who remember how the old game used to play. And I think that the satisfaction level of that increases quite a bit. Whereas in the last 20 years, I'm going to call it, in Madden, I feel like satisfaction levels have decreased because the only innovation has been what players in the league and what stadiums do we play in. I mean, I don't know. When I play sports games at this point in my life, I only want to create I want to role play a sport game. You know what I mean? Like I want to create a player and I want to follow that player's career. that was an innovation in 2006. But outside of that, I don't know how much more. And to give them a little bit of fairness, I don't know how much more can be innovated within those games.
And I think, like that, to your point, there is a level of that when before NIL deals existed, and back when the NCAA football was around. I know that it's come back, but you could take an NCAA created character, go through your NCAA career, get drafted, and then play into Madden. And having that connection between those two games, I think, was innovative and really fun. Something that I love to do, and something that I'm thankful to have back now that NCAA football can be made again in games.
So, do we feel like we have a vote here?
I do. I don't think I'm going to like y'all's vote, but I have mine.
All right, Dan, let's hear it.
Look, I'm not trying to take anything away from Resident Evil. I think that it has revolutionized that horror genre, and I definitely myself have fond memories of playing that game. And if we're being honest, I kind of like the Resident Evil franchise more than the Madden franchise, but that's because I'm bitter that the Madden franchise in recent years not only kind of skips on the innovation aspect, but also took away things that I enjoyed from previous iterations. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Madden really brought that multiplayer online aspect to the forefront. Madden was also like a game that I vividly remember where you could be on the same team with a friend in the room. And I'm talking like back on the Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64 days, where you could be playing on the same team with somebody in the room. You weren't playing against each other, which in and of itself was an innovation. Madden gets my vote.
Okay.
What about you, Scott?
I think that, I think for me, as we've been talking about this, where my brain has kind of gone is thinking about, like, if you were to write a comprehensive history of video games and like the things that have influenced the video game industry as a whole, maybe this is like an unfair disadvantage for it, but I feel like all of sports games would be like their own chapter, and they wouldn't really exist outside of that chapter. Like video games are their own, or sports video games are their own little bubble that don't tend to influence or change the narrative of anything else outside of that bubble. And so if you're thinking about this big anthology of the history of video games, you're going to talk about Madden in that one chapter, and then that's it. Whereas something like Resident Evil, I think, has a more flowing impact, and you'd see it come up as you talk about things like controls and maneuverability and camera and genre defining. And I feel like the impact that goes along with Resident Evil and its I don't know. I can't say that it's like it necessarily dominates in the four categories that we've really discussed, but I feel like it just has a stronger impact on the video game industry as a whole. Madden's certainly a juggernaut. It makes millions of dollars every single year. There's a reason why they keep making it. But as far as like importance to home interactive entertainment, I don't know that it pushes that needle for me. And this, I'm speaking to someone who's played a lot of it and who's played very little Resident Evil. I've played way more Madden than I have Resident Evil, but it just doesn't, it's not video gamey enough for me to continue in this bracket, if that makes any sense. So my vote goes Resident Evil.
I mean, did you hear about the people in the Jets organization? Like the actual New York Jets that we're making player personnel decisions based on Madden awareness ratings.
Yeah, and look at how well that worked out for them at the QB spot.
Look, I'm just saying Madden has real world impact.
Hey, this time you said real world and you meant it.
Yeah, and I meant real world because it's the real world.
Yeah, so let me see. No, my vote's still Resident Evil. Yeah.
So Madden and Resident Evil.
That is the matchup.
I think that strangely enough, I do think, Scott, your anthology analogy makes a tremendous amount of sense to me.
I'm a very smart person.
Well, I didn't say that.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
But I do think that, to your point, I think that sports games as a whole and Madden specifically would be very limited in terms of, if you're looking at the history of the games, of video games as a whole, Resident Evil, I think, does have a little bit more
clout.
I think it has more reach.
Sure.
Is really what it is. And I think that plays into the accessibility a little bit for it, as well as the innovation. Like character design alone, right? Would we have gotten Pyramid Head if we didn't have some of the initial character designs of the zombies from Resident Evil? I mean, it's hard to say because there's got to be some influence that exists within that. I do think that Madden has a much heavier load that it is taking with it, though. And the amount of players that it has, the amount of money that it makes, I think is hand over fist higher than Resident Evil.
Sure. I think in my mind, one of the things, and I just thought of this while you were talking about it, is when you think about, like, let's say a new game comes out and is made by an indie developer. They don't have a big marketing budget, so they're really relying on word of mouth. And it's something completely new and different. Are you more likely to hear somebody describe that game? Pick another game off the list, any random game off of our bracket. Just give me a game. I don't want to influence
Final
yours.
Fantasy.
Okay, so imagine somebody says to you, yeah, I've just been playing this new indie game. It's kind of like Final Fantasy meets Resident Evil, okay? You're more likely to hear that kind of comparison than to ever hear anyone say, oh, it's like Final Fantasy meets Madden. You know, like that sports genre that it's in is such a bubble that it doesn't influence other things. And I think that's what does it for me. That kind of, you'll never hear anybody say, oh, it's like Madden meets something else, you know?
Yeah, I can't say that argument sways me.
I mean, that's fine. It's just,
I hear what you're saying, but I'm still going to vote for Resident Evil to move on.
Didn't need to sway you.
I mean, I think the simple fact is if you just look at innovation is not just about what you did initially.
Yeah,
it is. It's much larger than that, and I think that Madden doesn't have any innovation since it was created.
You can't ignore the racist undertones within Madden. I mean, look at all the years they had Redskins in the game. That's fucked up.
And Chiefs.
yeah. There's still some problematic opportunities there, isn't there?
But I do realistically to Madden. When's the last time somebody said, "Oh, this year's Madden is great"?
I mean, I'm sure someone says it every
Michael
year.
Vick was on the cover. Like, realistically, let's be honest with ourselves. As good of a franchise as it is in terms of making money and being a success in that way, from a critic's perspective, Madden has been shit for years.
Yeah. It's definitely successful. It's quite possibly one of the most successful ones on this list, but I don't know. I feel like we're justifying our votes here. Yeah. I think we're...
Well, you guys might need to take some of that justification and sit on it to allow yourselves to sleep at night. Because Madden is definitely the bigger and I think more impactful franchise, and that's nothing bad about Resident Evil. And I just think the horror genre in and of itself is a niche, right? That not everybody will get into. Kind of like sports is a niche that not everybody gets into. But there are way more people that enjoy Madden than I think the Resident Evil series, and I think the units sold.
I don't know that I can agree with that, though, man. Like, truly, we talked about this in the first round. The number of Umbrella Corp things that you see in the world is huge. Like, in terms of just influence and the number of people that get into it, there are a lot of huge Resident Evil fans.
There aren't a ton as compared to the total number of NFL licensed merchandise.
That's bullshit, and you know it. No, that is a terrible argument.
Madden is the only NFL licensed approved video game for the NFL.
Millions of people watch the NFL.
Yes.
A fraction of those play Madden.
And
causation does not equal, or correlation does not equal causation. Like, it's not hand in hand. I'm sorry. Like, that's bullshit.
But the Madden franchise really takes what is existing within the NFL and uses that. It's not like the Madden franchise has its own characters or anything like that. Whereas Resident Evil is all stored into that IP, right? So the umbrella flags, the stars, right? All of that came from that video game. Madden is the only NFL licensed home video game.
I don't understand your argument here, but Resident Evil moves on, and we'll face Call of Duty in the next round.
All right. Well, speaking of, fellas, I think we finished an episode here.
Mm-hmm.
We next week we've got round 2, part 2. We'll be revisiting the west side of the bracket. Any particular matchups that stand out for you guys there?
There's one I don't want to talk about.
There are 3 on this list that I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Halo versus Sonic, man. Zelda versus Final Fantasy, Pokemon and Elder Scrolls. Like, all of those are heavy. And the only reason that I didn't bring up Grand Theft Auto versus Five Nights at Freddy's is because I don't give a shit about either of those games. So,
wow.
But outside of that.
All right. Well, you've got 3/4 of a good episode, it looks like, to look forward to next week, according to Matt. As usual, we want to thank you all for sticking around and listening with us. We encourage you, please consider giving the episodes likes, shares, subscribes, tell your friends to give us a listen. Join the Discord if you haven't already. You can find it in our on our Facebooks and on our all of our social medias. We've got a link tree out there that I've done some work on. All of our social media is linked to it. You can find us on, like I said, Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, YouTube. We're trying to get better and more consistent about posting content. So please check all that out. Again, thank you for sharing it if you have, and for giving us a listen. What else we got? I'm not doing all the work. This is the work
I'd like
part.
to thank Aaron O'Donnell for the music that you hear at the beginning and the ending of each episode. And I also want to give another shout out to Kmart Chris Evans for the fantastic work on the intro and outro videos. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, first, thank you. Second, go check it out on YouTube so you can see the great work that Matt does.
Chris Evans wishes he was like Matt.
That he was with Matt? I mean,
well, maybe. He might. I don't know.
Look, Chris, give me a call. I don't generally swing in that way, but we could find some commonality.
There might be some exceptions. And then again, reiterate, Matt and I have both been very active on Twitch. Dan can't figure out how to get it going, but the two of us have been on there. Check us out on those as well. Come say hi while we're playing video games. And then coming up in this episode's coming out on the 22nd, so a little under 2 months. We're going to have our live Mario special on March 10th, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. But until then, I've enjoyed you blowing my ocarina. I have been Scott.
I have found some interesting minerals in the dark recesses of your space, Matt Robison.
And I am slightly less evil, Resident Dan Default.
Bye-bye.